He's done this a couple of times before, and excellent. One of our best presenters, Tom Cox. We're lucky to have him on Zoom. So, Tom, I'm going to turn this over to you as soon as I introduce you. He's been active for a long time. He's a former candidate for governor himself. I managed his campaign back in 2002. He's also run as the Republican nominee for state treasurer. He's been a candidate for the Metro. He's done a lot of different things. He's been involved with a lot of issues. He's also a very good friend and associate of many years. So I would like to introduce Tom Cox, where he is going to talk about how to organize. It's all yours.
Thank you, Richard, very much. Thank you all for being here. Who is sitting nearest to the front? I'm going to need someone who can come up and talk to me periodically to give me a status on what's happening in the room. It could be Richard. I'd prefer it was if it wasn't actually. But Richard, if you can help me select somebody in the room who'd be willing to sit in the front row and periodically come up and speak into the microphone and tell me some of the things I'm going to need to know, because I can't see it quite as clearly as I'd like.
They'd like to see your face before you start with your slideshow. And there it is.
I can arrange that.
And he's asked for a volunteer for some. For a volunteer? Okay. Kristen had her hand up first. So Kristen is going to help you, Tom, with whatever you need. Maybe you want to describe what you wanted to do. And then it's all yours.
Super. And so my volunteer's name is what now? Kristen. And Kristen, I will occasionally say, hey, Kristen, can you come up and tell me something real quick? It'll be something like, do people look like they're finished, or are there anybody in the back of the room who can't hear me? Little questions like that if I were there, I could figure it out myself, but I'm not. So I'm going to need you to be my eyes and ears to some extent. Are you okay with that, Kristen? Awesome. Can we get a little round of applause for Kristen for being willing to step up and do that? Excellent. Good. It's good to see that she's an introvert who's managing to overcome her introversion. Free. I hear you just fine. Yeah. Now, I may ask you to come up real close and speak into the microphone if everyone's being loud, for instance, because in a minute you're all going to go into breakout groups and get into 2s and 3s and talk with each other. And that's going to be a perfect time for you to step closer and talk to me about the status of things. But first, let's get into the meat of our presentation. And I'm hoping that's legible. And Kristen, if you look back at the back row, do they look like they're squinting and straining, or do they seem like they can see this okay? They're looking all right? All good? Okay, super.
Right now we've got the participant list up on top of your slideshow.
That's on you, dude. You just close that. I can't make that go away. Only you can.
Okay. There you go. Okay,
Huzzah. Better? Excellent. Okay. So we're going to talk about limited government and what's involved in organizing people around local issues. And the reason this is important is if you are going to be active and effective politically, you're going to have to build coalitions and learn to work with people. And some of the time that means you're working with them on what they care about, which may or may not be what you most care about. But politics is largely the exchange of favors. One of the reasons that Don McIntyre was so very successful as an organizer himself is because he would always show up for other people's things. If you needed volunteers, he'd be there. I can think of a couple folks who I would absolutely go and work on their campaigns and their issues and their whatever it was, not because I had any really burning interest, I'm sorry to admit this, any burning interest in their topics so much as they'd helped me several times. And it was really past time for me to return the favor. And by the way, you're going to build a lot of really good relationships, friendships, comradeship in the course of doing this. And this is the kind of activity that binds communities closer together. So what I'm suggesting that you do is a very virtuous activity. So a bit about me. I was the Libertarian candidate for governor of the state of Oregon in 2002. I went on to be state chair the year after, so I've been a little bit in party politics, to the extent libertarians can be said to have a party. I tease. I was the Republican candidate for treasurer of Oregon. They recruited me pretty heavily, actually, to be their candidate. And I'm also an award-winning Toastmaster, a management consultant, and I specialize in teaching CEOs how to lead their teams and how to teach their subordinates to lead teams. Here's what I want to talk to you about today. I will push you very quickly through the question of what is a collective. Now that might seem like the most abstract, random thing for me to be teaching you, but in fact, understanding what is a collective is crucial to organizing. And I will say that not understanding what a collective really was significantly hampered me as an organizer and as an actor in the political realm. And I want to talk again very briefly about what is governance, because when we seek to be involved in politics, we're actually engaged in the governance of a collective. And then the meat of the presentation will be how you can use local issues to organize and to recruit. So what's a collective? All organizations are collectives in some sense. A collective is any group where the members agree to give the group certain powers over themselves as individuals. In particular, it's the power to reach a less than unanimous decision that still binds everybody. Now, you may notice that this is very different from a marketplace where everyone can go and buy whatever they want to buy and refrain from buying things they don't want. And everyone can more or less get their needs met. And if you don't like what's on offer, you can open up your own business and offer it. And that is by definition not a collective. It's a lot of individuals making individual choices, which is just another way of organizing. We reach less than unanimous decisions that bind us all on specific topics using various decision rules. And then we give the collective the power to compel us as individuals to honor the decision. Now you might be thinking, why would I do that? But the reality is we do it all the darn time. If you're a member of a co-op for groceries, I was a member of a co-op in the south side of Chicago where I went to school. And in exchange for like $10, I owned one share in the co-op and it gave me the right to come in and shop there. And if I'd like misbehaved, they would have had the right to, bar me from the store. But that's only fair, right? I mean, they couldn't come to my house or levy taxes on me because their realm with the scope was limited, but within that limit, they had pretty good powers, and I'd agreed to it when I went in. And collectives are really useful in organizing society. We also give collectives the power to change their decision rules using the same collective process. Now, a lot of people think, well, we'll have a collective just by voting. There's more to collectives than just voting. If you just do voting, you'll find that two wolves and a sheep vote on what they have for dinner, and the sheep ends up losing big. I'm checking to see if Kristen's smiling or if anyone around her is just horrified by what I'm suggesting here. Liberals don't believe this. So those in any progressives in the room are thinking, no, but collectives are all about getting along and cooperation and singing kumbaya around the campfire. It's like, no, collectives are about forcing people to do what the majority wants, which is one of the downsides of collectives. Now let's dive into this a little deeper. Getting to unanimous is hard, but if we could do it, no one would ever have to force anyone to do anything. We just talk until we agreed. So here's the 2x2 matrix to help you figure this out. The left-hand column labeled easy, it's like if we can get to unanimous agreement, and if it's easy to get there, why don't we just do that? But some of the times being unanimous will be hard. You get above 10, 15, 20 people, maybe into a few thousand or a few million. Yeah, you're never going to get unanimous. Okay, but there's also two rows here. There's certain topics where if we just, split the decision, we don't have to all be unanimous. That's crushing conformity. That's tyranny practically. I mean, why do we want to do that? Well, okay, so some topics belong in each of these different cells. Let's look at each one. So if it's easy to be unanimous and it doesn't matter whether you're unanimous, then it just doesn't matter what you do. If it's easy to be unanimous and it's not okay to just split and go in different directions, now you're talking about 3 or 4 people wanting to have lunch together, right? We can't all go to different restaurants, then we're not really having lunch together. That defeats the purpose. but you don't like fish, and I don't like the place you want to go, and somebody else suggests a place that none of us like. Well, what do? Well, you just keep talking until you agree, because we're in the easy column. And eventually 3 or 4 people will come up with some place they can eat. But what if the lunch is bigger? What if it's huge? What if it's, you know, a banquet for 1,000 people? Well, someone's going to pick 2 dishes, 1 chicken and 1 fish probably, and you'll have to tell them in advance which one you want. And if you have a third need, like they'll have a vegetarian plate set aside for anyone who can't handle those 2 things, and that's it. And if none of those work for you, you're probably not eating at that place. And that's collective choice. Now, of course, the smart thing to do is, if 50 or 60 people want to eat together, take them to a food court or a one of the cart pods, and we sit together, but everyone goes to a different place to eat, right? That's the market choice. And so if you believe in big government, you believe in making lots of things be collective choices, which means they have winners and losers. They tend to be one size fits all. Collective decisions always run the risk of trampling the minority. They don't usually allow for opt-outs. Oh yeah, they tend to favor the politically powerful, the connected, the popular, the demagogues, and they really run a big risk, which is public cost private profit and other forms of corruption. So if you believe in limited government, you believe in reducing the number of decisions that happen in that collective choice space in the lower right corner. That's really what limited government is about. It's not about pretending that every decision can be made without collective choice. Some things have to, but if we can limit the number, then limited government folks are happier. Whereas, again, I'm emphasizing limited government, fewer choices in the lower right corner, as opposed to good government people who are perfectly fine having lots and lots of government. They just think that we could make the decisions in the collective choice quadrant be less bad, and then that would be okay. And as you may have noticed in the prior slide with, you know, crushing the rights of minorities, I'll back it up, right? Winners and losers, one size fits all, trample the rights of minorities, don't allow for opt-outs, favoring the politically powerful and connected, and running the risk of corruption. Shouldn't we limit that? Like, why would we want more of those? Is my position. But hey, that's just me. And when you realize that you can't completely eliminate all collective choices, now you know why you have to organize locally. Is because some collective choices are going to get made, and if you're not part of an effective organized group, you're not sitting at the table, you're on the menu. So what's governance? Governance is just a system of making collective decisions. And that's why government and governance have the same basic root. All collective decisions are made by a process of governance. Governance also means the carrying out of the decision. So it's make the decision, yes, but it's also carry it out audibly, verifiably, correctly, completely, and also tweaking the rules. And so if you're going to get involved in governance at any level, you're going to be involved in one or more of these 3 things. And it goes around and around, right? Top center, make the decision. Lower right, decision execution. Lower left, amend the process. And around we go. You might also think of governance as the collective management of emergent issues. You often don't have to use collective processes on old issues. It's the new issues that have to be thought through and talked about and debated. Okay. What's the scope of governance? It can include all kinds of aspects of society, including dispute resolution, who pays whom and for what, change management, incentives for good action. It goes on and on. So let's have an example. Let's say a group of 20 people somehow reach agreement to share 5 large pizzas with specific toppings and crust options. Now, if who's ever tried to get 20 people to agree on anything, all right, if you can imagine achieving this level of agreement, you'd be thinking, wow, that's worth celebrating. But of course, just agreeing doesn't make pizza happen. Somebody has to put together the order, place the order, pick it up, pay for it, serve it, and then amend the rules for how we come up with these decisions next time. So there's that same 3 parts of governance in a nutshell. Okay, before I go further, I would like to ask you all to pull out your cell phones and let me ask you a question. And the reason your cell phone is going to come out, you're going to point the cell phone at the QR code. And if you have to walk to the front of the room to do that, you can. Or you can just use a browser and go to slido.com and stick in that 6-digit number. And I'm going to do the same thing with my phone so I can follow along with you. So when you point your camera at it, it should prompt you with a website. And here is the first question I want to ask you.
Hold on a second, Tom. I don't think everyone's on board yet.
Yep, the QR code is still there. It's just in the upper right, upper left corner.
Get to the QR code either by coming to the front of the room so your camera can see it, or else, in my case, you could zoom it. If you have a zoom your camera's video so it makes the square larger. And then your phone should key on it. You can tap on it, and Tom's question will appear after a brief Slido splash screen.
Yeah, and if you don't, the QR code thing isn't working for you, you can always do this slido.com thing here in the lower left corner. Just go to slido.com in a browser and it'll prompt you for a 6-digit number. And I'm going to ask Kristen to let me know if she's on. She's looking like she might be. And then look around the room and see if you are folks mostly getting there. Oh, someone has, 2 people have answered. I love it. Okay. Now, by the way, if you see an answer you already like, erase the one you're in the middle of typing and type the first letter or 2 of their answer. And when it pops open, it should give you a little drop down. And if you pick an answer that's already been given, that answer just gets bigger. Because you don't want 5 people with 5 different spellings of the word integrity. You want the word integrity to get 5 times bigger because 5 people agreed with that, or whatever, education, so on. Election integrity is big. Education is big. Also open borders and integrity in general, and medical freedom and water rights, which is someone slipping 2 answers in when I asked for your top answer. By the way, you can edit your response if you want to pick something that someone else is saying. Okay, 8 answers. And Kristen, real quick, when it looks to you like the number on screen in the upper right corner, it currently says 9. When it looks like half the room is voted, give me a thumbs up, okay? I'm not sure how many people are in the room. Got election integrity, voter integrity, similar. Medical freedom, open borders, medical freedom and water rights, tax reform, basic rights, nice. Okay, we got 12 answers on the board, and was it like 20 people in there? 25? About half? Okay, super. So here's the part where I tell you a little more about what you can do around organizing around local issues. And then the answer you gave in that pop-up, which is still available if you still want to finish putting your answer in, it's still out there. Go right ahead, okay? When you go out and try to organize people to work with you and you with them on issues that matter to them, you're going to start to create, either in your head or maybe even physically, a diagram that looks a little like this, right? You got the bitter place of today and the better place of tomorrow. And I've already put forth some bullets on what I think is wrong with today and how tomorrow might be better. Like, I would say that I don't have as many desired outcomes today as I would like. There's, few volunteers compared to what I would wish for, and maybe I feel like my organization is weak compared to what I imagine it to be. What would I like? I would like more limited government policy outcomes. I would like more good government activities like anti-corruption. I would like more limited government elected officials. I'd like broader public support for limited government. So that's where I'm coming from. Before I develop this any further, let's have another quick look at our up to 14, very nice. So I'm going to pause the screen share for just a minute. I'm going to ask everyone here to follow some very complicated instructions. You're going to get into pairs, groups of 2. If there's an odd number, you can have one group of 3. Otherwise, I want you in groups of 2. I want you to pair with someone you don't already know very well. Don't get up yet. Don't get up yet. Calm down. Haven't given you the instructions. You're going to pair with someone you don't know very well or don't know at all. And you're going to take turns. And the thing you set on screen about your top issue, the taller person, and if you're both the same height, the older person, and if you're both the same age as well, then arm wrestle for it. But one of you is going to go first, and that first person is going to listen first. And they're going to ask open-ended questions like, what was your topic? Why is that important to you? And you're going to keep asking open-ended questions with real curiosity about why their top issue is their top issue. When did you first know that was your top issue? Is there more to say about that? What have you done around that issue? And after about 2 minutes of listening, you're going to switch sides, and then the other person listens, and the first person talks about their top issue. And when you're the listener, all you do is listen and ask questions. That's it. You'll have 4 minutes total, 2 minutes each. After you get, I'll give you 30 seconds to get organized, and you got 2 minutes and 2 minutes. I'll call out the timing. Are the instructions clear? Kristen, do they look confused, or they look like they know what they're doing? Okay, you guys doing it? Go do it. Get up, walk around the room, find someone you don't already know, pair up with them. Okay, you've got 2 minutes starting now. If you run out of things to say, you can swap early. But please, first listener, be done listening in about 30 more seconds. Okay, switch sides, switch sides. All righty, time is up. Now, I need Kristen to be my eyes on this next thing. I'm going to give you 30 more seconds. I need you each. How might I want to play this? No, skip that. Kristen, just scan the room and ask people to come up with a word or two to describe the experience you had over the past 4 minutes. Okay, and just collect some words, and when they give you the word that's right for their group, just shout it out to me. Educational. What else? Like-mindedness. Okay. What are some other words for the experience you had? The emotional experience. The There was some frustration. Really? Tell me more about that. Yes. Sorry, I'm not hearing you very clearly. Did you want to say more about the frustration?
They were saying that the frustration came because we talked about it, but what could they do about it?
Okay. So good. You got a little unmet need got surfaced. Oh, that's nice. Okay. So guess what, folks? You've just engaged in the number one activity you need to engage in order to recruit people into action around local issues. You've just done it. That is, you talk to people you don't already know very well, and you ask them what matters to them, and you pay attention to the answer. More on this in just a minute. So let me get back to my screen share. Okay, so if today, what I'm hearing frustration, I'm hearing a sense that we're in the bitter place. We're not well enough organized. We don't have enough volunteers. We're not getting the outcomes we want. It sounds like you're in the bitter place today. Is that fair? Okay. And it sounds like maybe you'd like to be in a better place tomorrow with more limited government policy outcomes, perhaps, or I don't know what kind of policy outcomes, more of your preferred policy outcomes, more whatever you'd put in that right-hand box. There's stuff you want you aren't getting. And to get there, there are key activities you must engage in. And organizing is one of those activities. Government is not run primarily on big money, especially at the local level. It is primarily run not by large groups. Government at the local level is primarily run by small groups of angry, organized people, and particularly organized voters, because if you're not voting, you're not going to be able to exert influence into the collective. So let's talk about these key activities. Recruit and retain volunteers, activists, politicians, and cadre. Cadre are your hardcore people whose like their favorite hobby in the world is politics. I'm not one of those people. I wasn't for a while. Volunteers, activists, politicians, and cadre. You want to identify, communicate, and recruit around local issues that connect with your own values. So real quick, show of hands, how many people sat with somebody who the issue they talked about was exactly identical to your top issue? Okay, and probably a lot of voter integrity folks. Okay, now show me hands who partnered with someone where while their issue, you might have agreed with them, it wasn't the top issue that you had identified. There you had two different top issues in your team. A couple handful. You'll find out that you'll get a mix of these things. Some of the time you guys totally match on what your top issue is. Other times they won't match, but they'll be congruent. Like if you believe, if voter integrity is your top issue and mine is something about, getting the school board to be more representative of local values, I could see some overlap there. I could work with you and you could work with me. And that's how you build coalitions. You also need, as key activities, effective political activity, lobbying matters, testifying matters, electioneering matters, door to door and other forms of one-on-one outreach, public outreach, political theater, public relations. You'll see one-to-one on the electioneering row and one-to-many on the row below it. And you need a mix of both. Political theater is when you do things that help people see your perspective when they might not have otherwise. And it helps if it's amusing and or makes your opponents look foolish. And of course, running and endorsing candidates. Now, quick check. How many of you see at least one thing on that list that you've already done at least once reasonably effectively? Okay. How many of you see at least one thing up there that you'd be willing to learn to do effectively? Okay. So a few more hands. You don't have to do all these things yourself because remember, you're assembling a team and maybe you don't like lobbying or testifying, but you'll find somebody else who does. And maybe you'd much prefer to do electioneering and somebody else does political outreach. It's all good. You need a team. Let's talk about the recruit. Need a quick time check. Richard and or Kristen, how much time have I got left before you're going to boot me off stage? 30 more minutes. Okay, super. I will talk very slowly. Kidding. Just kidding. So let's talk about the recruit, how you get them. You've got to find out the issue they care about. Now, when you were listening and your only job was to listen, you weren't even allowed in theory to agree, or at least you didn't take a lot of time talking about how much you agreed. You were just there asking questions and listening to answers. For how many of you was that any fun at all? Any enjoyment at all doing that? A couple of you? It was several. Okay, nice. We almost never teach people to ask questions and listen to answers, but that is the number one thing you will do when you start to recruit people, is find out what they care about by asking with genuine interest. Number one, you figure out what sense of purpose they have, what matters to them. If they're frustrated, that's wonderful because there's something they're willing to put energy into that isn't yet the way they want it, as opposed to an issue they care about where things are in pretty good shape. You also need to know what are some of the activities that they enjoy. Do they like speaking in large groups, small groups, one-on-one? Would they rather sit silently in office stuffing envelopes or going on social media? They're going to need training. They're also going to need camaraderie and a sense of belonging and acceptance. This is the most underappreciated thing in my experience of any political movement, certainly in Oregon. When I volunteered with the Republicans in Washington County, I noticed this one volunteer who was there all the time and really worked hard, and she wasn't terribly, she didn't draw a lot of attention to herself, but she was just really reliable and competent, very competent. And then one day she wasn't there. So I asked somebody what her number was, looked up her number, and I called her, left her a voicemail, and I said, hey, I noticed you weren't at the meeting the other day. I just wanted you to know we missed you, and I hope you're okay. Hope to see you at a future one. Like not a guilt trip or anything, just checking in, letting her know we noticed she wasn't there, we cared. She told me that she'd been volunteering for 20 years, and that was the first time anybody had ever said that they missed her or that they cared about her. 20 years, first time anybody acted like she was part of a group. Huge opportunity to improve the game there. Your recruit also needs some victories and a sense of progress toward worthy goals. Now, that can be a problem. I see this a lot with Republicans in Oregon and libertarians everywhere, is they tend to lose a lot of elections, and so they feel like losers. The good news is you don't have to win an election to make some forward progress that you can talk about and keep people motivated. The key is to set achievable short-term goals that you can move the ball on. Okay, we haven't won the governorship in 37 years. I pick on Republicans because I imagine many of you are either Republicans or fairly Republican adjacent. Is that fair? Am I making unwarranted assumptions? Is this a room full of progressives and I don't realize it? Okay, that's a no. Hate to assume these things. So let's say that you're on a political side that hasn't had the governorship in 37 years, which is certainly where the Republicans are today. That might feel bad. Okay. So where do you focus? And the answer is you focus on things you can move the needle on. Local elections, nonpartisan elections, voter turnout, voter registration, attendance at rallies, having a complete and accurate list of voters. Do we have a precinct person who will walk around, knock on the doors of people who are already registered with our party and just connect with them like I just showed you to do for 2 minutes, and then take notes about what the person said they cared about and come back with the notes and share it? Like if you could do that about 100 times, you'd start to build a base of people who'd be willing to be activists. And you get that at the low, low price of a 2-minute conversation where you listen to somebody. Okay, so here's the organizing cycle. So given whatever our values and purpose are, and whoever we is that's your collective, could be, the conservative students of East Oregon, University of Eastern Oregon. It could be the housewives of Lost Me Valley. I don't care. It's whoever you find yourself with and you find you've got some shared values and purpose. Now you want to look around you and notice a relevant local issue that's upsetting people. This is very easy to find. Identify some groups whose members might care. Now you might just say, I'll go straight to the individuals who care, but I'll tell you why you want to find the groups whose members might care. Like the PTA, the Parent Teacher Association. If you've got a school issue, PTA is probably going to be full of people who might be on both sides, but you just care about reaching the people on your side. But find the groups, and then it could be a gardening club. It could be, they don't have to have anything to do with politics, but if they're a group and they have group meetings, you can ask the group to ally with you or let you come and address their members and or publish your article about, if they're a bunch of dog fanciers in Lake County, you could talk about how this policy affects the dog owners of Lake County, and invite people to take action, which means they as individuals reach out to you, get in touch with you. You now have their name on your list. You can invite them to be a part of your group. And then you start communicating every small victory and every milestone. We set out to knock on 200 doors last weekend and we got 201. Woohoo! Guess what? Nobody else did that. We did it. That's a victory. And then honor your volunteers. Now, if you can do these 6 things consistently, you will start to have a flywheel of success. And by honor the volunteers, I don't mean anything all that big. The guy I volunteered with talked about a time he was somebody else. He was a candidate, but before that, he'd been a campaign manager for somebody. And he said that he'd asked his boss, what's my budget for recognizing volunteers? And the boss said, 0. And my friend said, all right, fine. He went over to the break area. They had like a little folding table with some paper plates and some like stale donuts and stuff. Took one of those standard size staplers that you can unhinge so it swings open. He took a paper plate, wrote on it the plate with a big fat tip marker, the name of the best volunteer from the prior day, went over to the wall, took that stapler and pop, nailed that plate to the drywall with the kid's name on it. The very next volunteer that walked in, looked around, looked over and said, how do I get my name up there? That's all it takes to honor the volunteers. Show some recognition. You can be a little more elaborate than that maybe, but you don't have to spend anything. You just have to pay attention. Okay, before I move on, I want to see a quick show of hands. Kristen, look around and give you the answer. Who here feels that there's something on this list that they could do either like today, or show of hands, noticing issues, identifying groups, reaching out? Okay, now how many of them, again, raise your hands, Is there anything on this list that you feel you might be able to do if you got some specific training on how to do it? I'm seeing more hands go up. Okay, guess what? You're in the right place, because Richard specializes in exactly this kind of thing. Okay, now where do you look for local issues? Tune into your local topics like social media. There's one app called Nextdoor, which limits your interactions to a geographic area, as opposed to Facebook, where you're in groups with people from Botswana and Mali and East Jesus and North Korea, probably, I don't know. And there aren't going to be any local issues in that group, but Nextdoor and other local social media can give you that. Also, local news website comments. I was shocked. I was on a national public radio interview in their studios, and when they wanted to talk about what the people think, their answer was to go to the Oregonian website and scan the comments on the articles, and that was how they got their finger on the pulse of society. I thought the comment section on news sites was just a cesspool. I just assumed that no one looked at it. Well, we should be looking at it. We should be planting our thoughts in there, and we should be scanning people for folks we don't yet know who are polite, thoughtful, and on our side. Look to other local social media groups. Talk radio can be good, and so forth. I'm going to pause here and say, does this feel plausible to you? Do you feel you could do this? Okay. That was the most tepid yes I've heard in a long time. Okay. At least you're laughing. I'll take it. Let's talk about volunteer types. There's lots of different types of volunteer. It is a mistake to believe that all volunteers are the same, want the same thing, should want the same thing, or can all do the same kinds of activities. Right, there's some significant differences in your volunteer types. Number one is your generic volunteer who's willing to do one-on-one activities like knock on doors or make phone calls or do other kinds of outreach. Then you've got your activists. They will tend to prefer one-to-many activities. Activists are often single issue. Volunteers are more useful because they're multi-purpose. And if you consider yourself an activist, consider not just working on your own issue, at least some of the time. You need to bank some favors. You need to work with others so they'll work with you. But you want to have a mix of these. You want to look for your generic volunteers who are willing to show up for the social aspect of it, for moving the ball forward on their shared values, and also look for some activists to invite in. And then there's politicians. Politicians are the public face of change. They're almost always generalists. Activists who get elected tend to be terrible politicians because the activists specialize in an issue and politicians can't afford to because they have to deal with whatever business comes to them in their position. And then you've got the fourth category called cadre, the dedicated people. They're careerists. They tend to take jobs on political campaigns when they're available, and then they do other things the rest of the year. I used to be cadre. Richard has been. And then the fifth kind, the one you need to watch out for, is the toxic volunteer. This is the policy purist, the person who's looking for a fight, the person who cannot work and play well with others. You need to eject them. And one of the reasons that you want your group to have a written membership, and in fact, I would advise that whatever your group is, that you set a policy that members have to be voted in. Even if it's a formality, even if everyone always gets voted in. Because if you establish the precedent that people have to be voted in, you have the power to vote them back out when it turns out they're toxic. And you may only need to do this once in a while, but when you need it, you really, really need it. It's said that 3% of the population are sociopathic. Often they disguise it well, but if you find you've gotten one of them, they aren't all progressives. They're kind of all over the place. You need to be able to get rid of them. I want to say one thing about activists and politicians real quick, something that you're going to need to be aware of. Activists are one half of a pair with politicians in creating social change. The other volunteer types also matter, but on a particular issue, whether it's gay marriage or local control of schools or the mask mandate or whatever it is, on a certain issue, there's certain people who are so excited by it that this is all they talk about, all they care about. And if public opinion is a boulder that doesn't want to move, and most public opinions don't want to move very much, they have a lot of inertia like a big boulder. Activists are on the one side of that boulder, flinging their bodies against the boulder, trying to make it move. And they are setting off firecrackers, and they're hitting it with bricks, and they're, just smacking away at it and shouting and yelling. These are the people who go around and throw paint on people who wear fur and say fur is murder. Okay, nobody likes activists, and the more effective they are, the more no one likes them. For a reason, is because most people are okay with the way things are, because if they weren't okay with it, the boulder wouldn't be there. Wherever the boulder is represents the middle of public opinion. And activists want to change it, and most people don't want to be changed. But over time, they make enough people uncomfortable with the lack of change that the boulder's ready to move. And the job of the activist is to make people who don't already care start to care, and to make them want to care in the same direction. And so that might be wearing a fetus pin, the size of a fetus on your lapel to talk about your opposition to abortion. Some people be very uncomfortable with that. That's exactly correct. If that's your goal, making people uncomfortable is what activists do. You see why activists might not fit in well with other volunteers some of the time. If you are an activist, you must learn to dial it down when you are not actually talking to the public. You must learn to work and play well with others. Because if all you enjoy doing is being a jerk, and being an activist is your way of being a jerk with some social approval, that can turn toxic some of the time. So watch out for them. Politicians, by contrast, they don't care about any one issue. They care about all the issues. And so they're looking for a boulder that's about to move. And they do something very, very important. The politician goes to the other side of the boulder, and he starts knocking pebbles out of the way so the boulder can start to roll. And he starts saying things to the public like, this boulder were over here, it wouldn't be so bad. I can see a way for this to move, and we could manage that. That might be better. It wouldn't be awful. It wouldn't be the end of the world if. And if the activist makes people uncomfortable with the lack of change, the politician makes people comfortable with change. And unless they both exist and work together, that boulder's not going to move. And politicians love to pretend that they led things. They'll find a parade and jump in front and pretend they're leading. And it's the activists who actually made things happen over the decades. But without the politicians, the change isn't going to happen, or it'll happen in some toxic fashion that you won't like the outcome. So that's my long rant about that. I have a second question for you on your cell phone. I want to know what happened to recruit you into your first political campaign. And by what happened, I mean, did someone call you? Did someone reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? Did you meet somebody at a party and they said, oh, I'm running for office? That's literally how I got involved. I was at a party and this guy said, oh, I'm running for state representative on the Libertarian ticket. I'm like, really? That's cool. And the next thing I knew, I joined the Libertarian Party and Richard Burke was calling me. Like, that's all it took, was somebody said something at a party. So I want to know what happened for you that got you recruited into your first political campaign. And if you haven't yet been active in any kind of political campaign, just say nothing, like the word nothing. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to call that up and put. Okay, and I'll start showing the results. Mask mandate. Heard them speak locally. Ooh. Mask mandate, vax mandate, COVID. Heard someone speak locally, and my answer is obvious. I met a candidate. Let me see if I can rephrase my question, because you're telling me the thing that happened in public policy that gave you motivation. But I want to know what was the mechanism that took you from wanting to take action to actually connected with a group who was taking action? Did someone invite you? Did you click on an ad? What was the on-ramp? Civics in high school, neat. A friend. I'll have to ask this a little more cleanly next time I present this, but someone invited me. Lawn sign distribution. Oh my God, someone invited me. That's all it takes, folks. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and finish putting your answer. We've got 10 answers in. We'll probably get another up to 11. We'll get a few more in here. Government expansion, Trump, friend, lawn sign distribution. Yep, invited. Someone invited me. Invitation. Yep. Very nice. The word invite or invite, invited, and invitation are up there, along with someone invited me. That seems to be the winner. So what I'm going to ask you to do is get back into your breakout groups, but this time get into groups of 3. Again, it can be the same person as before or not. I want you to stand up and move around the room. Get into groups of 3. And here's before you go, but don't move yet. What I want you to ask each other and answer is, who else could you invite and what's stopping you? And that's a hard question to think through, but maybe write this down. Who else could you invite to be active with you, and or what's stopping you? Okay, groups of 3, I'm gonna give you 3 minutes in your groups of 3. Everyone just talk with each other. There's no taking turns, just talk. I'll put the timer on screen. And after 3 minutes, I'm gonna want you to come up with your answers, and Kristen's gonna assemble all the answers from all the groups. All righty? Is it clear what you're doing? Go. Okay, about 30 more seconds. 30 more seconds. Okay, time's up. Time is up. Kristen, once again, I invite you to go around and find out what the groups had to say for themselves. Try to get them to boil it down to a short phrase or a single word. What did they learn? What did they learn? And just call it out to me so I can hear it, please.
Complacency and either they're too busy or they're woke. What else? COVID.
COVID's getting in the way. Okay, sure. What else?
Yeah. They're doing it. They're having a small group together.
They're doing it. Nothing's stopping them.
Right. We don't want to scare them. You know, we don't say something that might not want to offend or scare or.
Yeah, there's some fear.
Yes, that's true. I've done that. I'm like, you know what they're doing? They're just watching, sitting on the gun watching them. They don't have to know that I know, you know? Thinking that maybe I need to pursue it more, you know, asking, following up with people.
So I'm going to cut you guys short here. I'm glad you guys surfaced both who you could invite, which gives you some things to work on, right? And also the things that felt like roadblocks that might be preventing you from taking more action. Because whatever you identified as a potential roadblock, something that was holding you back, once you've named it, we can work on it. And Richard is here to make you effective. And so knowing what your roadblocks are is the first step to overcoming them. On that note, I'm going to ask if you have any questions before I wrap up. I think I'm near the end of my time.
Okay, any questions for Tom? A lot of information I think you're absorbing. Here's a question, just a moment.
Is there a way that we can get the PowerPoint?
Yes, Richard, I will send Richard the PowerPoint and he will distribute it to you.
I will put it on the homepage of the westernlibertynetwork.org website. There'll be a story about this conference posted very soon, and I'll make sure there's a link to the PowerPoint and Greg Burnett's PowerPoint. Other questions? Yeah, we've got something over here. Thank you for all you taught us to open our eyes and give us a framework. So, thank you. Before you go, Tom, let's see your face again. I want to get a picture of you on the screen. There it is. Okay. That's chroma key. That's chroma key. Do you remember Wayne's World when they used chroma key? They were in Japan and everywhere else, and then it's like Delaware. I'm in Delaware. Any other questions for Tom? Thank you, Tom. Tom, as always, you have done
Thank you all very much.